I'm Mike Ryan. I'm the Executive Director of the Board of Elections in the City of New York. Thank you for watching this training video about maintaining the temporary solutions we've provided to improve accessibility at our poll sites. What you do as poll workers is so important for our voting process. Your hard work and attention to detail helps to ensure that all voters have a poll site that is safe, dignified, and convenient. Thank you for your service to the people of the City of New York. We cannot do it without you.
The Board of Elections must ensure that every poll site is accessible to every voter, including voters with disabilities. While many people with disabilities have been able to use our poll sites in the past, we want to include everybody.
So we've looked in detail at each poll site and identified additional problems that affect people with disabilities. Then we developed temporary solutions to make our poll sites accessible as required by the Americans with Disabilities Act. These problems include such things as stairs, steps, or steep sections of walkways and ramps. When a walkway or ramp surface is not flat, we talk about it in terms of its running slope and its cross slope. The running slope is measured along the direction of travel. The cross slope is measured perpendicular to the direction of travel. A steep section of running slope on a ramp could cause someone who uses a manual wheelchair to get stuck part way up the ramp when they run out of steam, or if it's really steep. It could even cause them to flip over backwards. Surfaces with steep cross slopes can be difficult for people who use manual wheelchairs, crutches, or even prosthetic ankles. That's because the sideways force of gravity is always pulling them off to one side. It takes a lot of extra energy to fight that pull. It can also cause people using crutches to misgauge their strides and to get tripped up and fall.
We've also found problems with ramps that have landings that are too short or too narrow. In many cases, those landings are too small for some scooter and power wheelchair users to make the turns required to get into the voting area. And we found some long ramps that don't have the required handrails on both sides for people who need them for balance or resting. Other issues in some of our poll sites include conditions like door approaches that are not level or not large enough to allow wheelchair and scooter users to maneuver around and open them independently. In some places, there are wide cracks and gaps in the walking surfaces. We found tall door thresholds that might trip voters. And we've seen doormats with frayed, curled, and wrinkled edges that can also cause tripping. To solve these problems, the board has developed temporary solutions that include specialized mats, temporary aluminum ramps, transition plates, leveling platforms, gap fillers, and other simple solutions.
As a coordinator, you will not be able to modify a ramp or reconstruct a platform, but there are some types of problems that you can catch and maybe even fix during the day. Those problems are the ones that we're going to cover in this video. The first thing you'll need to check is that all of the required temporary equipment, such as platforms, ramps, transition plates, rubber ramps, rubber mats, and BOE mats, have all been installed in the correct locations where shown on the schematic drawing of the poll site and the floor plan. Following the ADA checklist in the coordinator's supply envelope, verify the location of temporary equipment at the beginning of the election day before the poll site opens. Then re-verify their locations every 2 hours using the same ADA checklist, because sometimes these temporary solutions, especially the smaller ones, can move and/or become unsafe. You'll also need to check that each temporary ramp's handrails don't become loose or wobbly. The handrails must be stable so that users can keep themselves from falling as they go up and down the ramp. The handrails must also be continuous along their full length and free of gaps and sharp edges that might catch someone's fingers or clothing. If any sections of the handrails develop any of these problems, call the Board of Elections office to send out a repair crew. Verify that the connected sections of ramps are stable and don't shift or sag during the day. If you find an opening that has shifted to widen to more than a ½ inch and it can't be easily fixed by sliding the parts back together and securing them, you may be able to cover the opening with a stiff mat, but make sure that it bridges the opening well and that its edge transitions are not too steep, as we will discuss later. If that doesn't work or if a ramp support breaks loose, report it to the Board of Elections office immediately and warn voters of the problem until it's fixed so that no one trips on it.
Now that you know that the temporary ramps and handrails are in the right places and are stable, there are some other things to watch out for throughout the day. Many poll sites will need mats to cover deep cracks. gaps, and openings in the accessible route that are more than ½ inch wide. These kinds of openings in the walking surface can catch cane and crutch tips and the wheels on walkers and wheelchairs. When a mat is used to cover a gap in the floor or walkway or an extension cord, you'll need to make sure that it's secured well enough to stay in place with the expected foot traffic that will be coming and going all day. If not, you'll need to secure the edges with some sturdy tape.
You'll also need to verify that any mats on the route don't have any curls, wrinkles, or turned up edges that might be tripping hazards. For most people, a simple curl in a floor mat is something they'd simply step over. But imagine that you're elderly, or someone else who walks with short steps or difficulty, or who has a balance problem. That curl could easily result in a fall and possible injury. Along this same line, you'll need to check for abrupt changes in level at every temporary platform, ramp, transition plate, and floor mat's edge. Any level change that is over ½ inch tall and not beveled, or is over ½ inch high if it's not gently ramped, could cause someone to trip and possibly fall. Or it could make a wheelchair or walker wheel stop abruptly and toss someone onto the floor.
These things should have been handled ahead of time. But again, it will be your responsibility to check that on Election Day, these temporary solutions stay safe. Sometimes you can fix a problem like this with sturdy tape. If not, call the Board of Elections to send someone out to fix it. Tall thresholds and short lips in doorways can also create problems for people who have a wide variety of disabilities. They can be trip hazards, but they can also make it difficult for wheelchair, scooter, and walker users to get over the level change while attempting to operate, open, and maneuver through the door. When a transition plate, thick mat, or level landing has been installed to fix a door threshold problem, it needs to be checked every 2 hours using the ADA checklist to make sure it stays in place all day and that it doesn't move and leave a gap more than ½ inch wide.
If you find a problem, call the Board of Elections to send out a repair crew.
Make sure to think about these things from the voter's perspective throughout Election Day so we can make sure our poll sites are accessible for everyone all day. It is your hard work and attention to detail that can ensure a smooth day at the polls. We are grateful for your time and we look forward to seeing you on Election Day.